this morning, that's your little handout. It's here together, for gathering. You can rise or you can stay in your chair as you want. We are here together in this holy moment, and we're grateful for the winding road that brought us to this place. One more time. We are here together in this holy moment, and we're grateful for the winding road that brought us to this place. Thanks for singing the prelude with me today, friends.
Good morning. I am Kim Chappell, and I'm today's worship associate and also a member of your Board of Trustees. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Lancaster. This month is Women's History Month. We are also in the Christian season of Lent, a time for preparing for the coming of Easter. Millions around the world of the Islamic faith are in the midst of the holy month of Ramadan today. The Baha'i fast began on March 2nd and will continue until through March 20th. Today is St. Patrick's Day. Thursday will be an auspicious day. Not only the spring equinox and the first day of spring, but also Nowruz, the Persian and Baha'i New Year that began as a Zoroastrian festival, the celebration of Ostara. Here at UUCL, we come together to nourish the spirit, connect in love, and act for justice. We welcome you this morning just as you are, whatever your heritage, whatever your faith, whomever you love, however you identify. Today, you are part of this spiritual community. And if this is your first time here, may you soon discover that it is also your spiritual community. As has become our custom, let us give a special welcome to all those joining the service this morning on Zoom. I invite those on Zoom to turn your cameras on and wave to us, and in turn, everyone in the sanctuary, let us wave to the camera at the back of the sanctuary. We welcome all ages in the sanctuary today. Our playroom in the adjoining building is open for children if parents would like to bring their children or child there now, or they may leave for programming after the time for all ages. There is also a table with activities for busy hands of all ages in the Women's Memorial Room opposite me at the back of the sanctuary. I invite everyone to take a moment to consider this sacred space and acknowledge the truth of the land beneath and around us. We are gathered on land once inhabited by people known as the Susquehannock and the Conestoga, and ancient peoples long gone before them. We acknowledge the violent legacies of genocide, displacement, and settlement that led to our being here today, and remind ourselves to live humbly in relationship to this land and with all the indigenous peoples still living on this continent. May we also acknowledge that the wealth and foundation of the United States was built upon the labor and toil of enslaved people. Many indigenous people will say, all are relatives. May we live into this truth and aspiration together. Please welcome this morning one of our affiliated community ministers, Chaplain Heather Gehron Rice.
Good morning. That's been a long time coming if you haven't been here before. I've been working toward that for about 20 years now, so I'm just as excited as everybody else. The flaming chalice is the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, and as I read this chalice lighting, Kim will light the chalice for us. To Remember Our Promises by the Reverend Sarah C. Stewart. To remember our promises, bring who you are as you enter our church this morning. Bring your best self and your struggling self. Bring your mistakes and your triumphs. Bring your shortcomings and your recommitment to good. Bring yourself here and open your heart to beauty, to truth, to the door that is open to the presence of God. Here in this church, we are trying to walk together on the peaceable way, trying to hammer out division and hatred and all that separates one from another. We try and we fall short, but held in love, we try again. We come together this morning as a church to bow our heads in prayer, to raise our voices in song, to remember our promises, and vow to live by them once again. And Eli, would you lead us in hymn number 317 in our gray hymnal?
You may rise and body your spirit as you're able, and as this might be a new hymn to some of us, Alan's going to play through it once, and then we'll sing all 4 verses.
People
time when we ask those who are young or young in spirit to come up. And I'm not seeing many short people, so maybe I could have a couple of taller people who feel young to come help me. So we have a wonder box, and we usually hide something in it to talk about to kind of give us a preview of what the service is. So Anthony, do you want to find out what's in the wonder box for us?
Sure, okay.
And I think some of you out there might have some of these blocks too. Obviously, I was feeling hopeful that there would be a lot more people up here. So I want you to think about your block as a promise. A promise that you're going to show up and that you're going to speak your truth. And when we put all of our promises together, what happens? Can you help me, Anthony? Okay. Well, I guess that's a good point. Anthony pointed out that there are a lot of buildings in Ireland, and I think that's probably a really good thing. So what happens if we stack these all up? Do you guys want to help? Okay. Okay. So a couple of years ago, the pandemic happened, and do you know what happened? What parts stayed together?
It's green with the iron.
Yeah, well, and if you look at the bottom, so the ones that fell off were the ones that were all laying the same way, which kind of means if everybody's the same and does the same thing, it doesn't hold together so well. But at the bottom, where we put them crosswise, they hold together a lot better.
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah.
So maybe should we fix it? Mm-hmm. Okay. So now which way do they go?
Now I'm shaking again.
Well, we don't need to shake it again, but maybe we need to put it together the other way. Although it was fun to shake it.
But yeah.
So for now, you guys are going to go back to your seats, please and thank you. And when you come up for the time for all ages, for joys, sorrows, and complex truth, I'd like you to bring your block and your promise and add it to our tower and building so that we continue to get taller and to grow and to be strong. Thank you, guys.
And for the recessional today, we'll sing the prelude just as we did. Ready? We are here together in this holy moment, and we're grateful for the winding road that brought us to this place.
I would ask if you could join me in a moment of silence. And I think we're not silent very often, so sometimes you miss that the quality and texture of silence is different if you're silent together. Blessed be. At this time in the service, we hold our joys, sorrows, and complex truths, the ones that rest heavy on our hearts this morning. Kim will plant stones, as I mentioned some of them, and then I'll invite you to come forward in silence if you want to place your own stone for a joy or a sorrow or complex truth. A stone of concern and care for the desperate situation in Gaza. May the violence end, the hostages be returned, and aid and restoration begin. A stone of care and joy as we learn of successful surgeries among our UUCL family. May all find strength and healing. A stone of concern and care for those waiting to find out about pending surgeries. A stone of concern for the volcanoes once again erupting in Iceland, 7th time since 2021. A reminder of the shifts in our climate and the increasingly fragile state of this planet we call home. And a joy. Reverend Elizabeth on Friday had the honor of officiating her oldest child's wedding. And your blocks. What do you promise? What do you bring to this place that is from your deepest soul? You're welcome to come forward, place your block and a stone or shell into our sand.
Humans have been asking questions about faith and commitment throughout history. In Jewish and Christian traditions, commitment was understood as covenant. God made promises to humankind, and humankind to God. In covenant, people promise to keep God's commandments, and God abides by the promises He makes. But covenant is very difficult to keep. Covenants were made, broken, and renewed. Our Puritan forebears in covenantal religion struggled in their time to understand how they might live a moral life and build a godly commonwealth. But they failed to ask, who is our neighbor? They failed to ask, do I love if I love only my own? Religious triumphalism in religion and their greed for land led to violence and the slaughter. It led to the enslavement of native peoples of this hemisphere and those of Africa. Their covenant was inadequate because without including love for God's creation and its peoples, it produced a covenanting community turned in on its own. Our covenanting must strive to be inclusive and transformative so that we might nurture a world of creativity and peace. What responsibilities do we have? To what and to whom? UU James Luther Adams thought there was something greater to which we could commit our loyalty, to something he called an ultimate human concern. What is your ultimate concern? To what do you owe your loyalty and commitment? As we grow our personal understanding, strengthen, deepen our community, and practice spiritual justice making, we ask, what do we promise one another? How willing and capable are we of commitments that ask us to live our high aspirations? What promises do we make to our faith? What sacrifices are we willing to make to create and sustain communities of welcome, hope, and service? What promises do we make to the world? How do we become the people who others can count on to stand on the side of love? Each day of GA, we have created a space to hear one another. We can meet one another, hear one another, understand more of what we need to know to understand our promises. We can meet one another. We can explore what calls other people into deeper relationships to the holy, one another, and all beings. And how when we break them, we can renew our promises. What do we promise one another?
Our reading today is from The Spirit and Promise of Our Covenant by Reverend Alice Blair Wesley, and was the 2000 Men's Lecture Series, an annual series of lectures on religious topics, an innovative force in Unitarian Universalist thought. It makes sense to me to believe that all the great religious traditions of the world began with somebody's extraordinary insight into what, in all this great buzzing, banging, blooming, and silent mystery, really matters most for human beings to love, to understand, to trust and be faithful to, because it is life-giving and life-enhancing. You and I stand as Unitarian Universalists in the long tradition of the covenantal free church. We add the adjective liberal and say ours is a liberal free church, meaning our everyday world has forced upon us the recognition that no one religious tradition has a monopoly on right love and truth. Therefore, through the depths of our own though the depths of our own tradition are more available to us through inheritance and are the depths from which we must live, we want to, and we will try to, be open to others. We are not exclusivists claiming our way is the only good way. Yet we do specially treasure our own religious tradition precisely for its political relevance, for its constant reminder to us that human freedom and human health is a function of how we organize socially, what is the shape of our economic and governmental and religious institutions. You and I stand as Unitarian Universalists in the long tradition of the covenantal free church. We add the adjective humanist and say ours is a humanist tradition, meaning our everyday world has forced upon us the recognition that valid religious insights, even the most extraordinary, are always rooted in ordinary human experience of concrete events. We can, thank God, be faithful to what we cannot help believing is true about the way things are with us, and should be, and could be, begin anew to live faithfully, starting now. For this, we cannot help believing. While the interdependent web of existence of which we are a part judges us and frustrates us, not only as individuals, but as peoples, when we disregard or violate its laws, it is also gracious, offering us over and over new chances for the practice of authentic, creative, lawful, and loving, redemptive freedom.
I know that was a lot of words, but that was from 20 pages and kind of encapsulated a lot of the thought, and that's not unusual in our UU tradition. So for those of you in our sanctuary today, what's the first thing you did when you got your bulletin this morning? I usually glance at the picture, open it, and I attended a Lutheran church for a while, so I have to find out what the hymns are so I can mark them in the hymnal. And then I look at what's happening after the service and check to see what's going on next Sunday. But do you know what I don't usually pay attention to? These words right here. We covenant. We covenant to provide a welcoming community. It's on here every Sunday. And what does it mean to covenant? Webster's tells it can be both a noun, which is usually a formal, solemn, and binding agreement, or a verb, to promise by a covenant. But that doesn't quite capture the nuances. David Brooks in the New York Times pointed out that contracts protect interests, covenants protect relationships. You contract for services, you covenant for gifts. Covenant asks us to commit ourselves to one another. Cheryl M. Walker further explains, in true community, we gain a lot. We gain affirmation of who we are, both as individuals and as part of a group. We gain the wisdom of others who may have different ideas from our own, so that together we may create a greater vision of a future that we can work toward making real. In true community, we are supported in our life's journey because we feel safe to be known at our deepest levels, because we are all committed to the health of the community, and it cannot be healthy unless and until its members are. And finally, we gain the commitment and the power to change the world. So one of the next phrases is trusting good intentions. Well, what does it mean to trust good intentions? And how has that idea changed since we've learned more about microaggressions and the difference between intention and impact? That sometimes you're going to say or do something, me included, that hurts somebody. And it doesn't matter if your intention was pure, if it caused harm. Is trusting good intentions a permission slip to speak without reflecting on the impact of our words and actions? Does trusting good intention turn into an excuse to ignore the impact of our words and actions on others? If trusting good intentions is all that's expected of us, we aren't asked to invest very much of ourselves in this tradition or community. We're good people. That's a core value for many of us, and we don't want to hurt anybody. I don't think any of us intentionally goes out of our way to hurt somebody else. And we're human beings and we make mistakes. And we don't know what we don't know. We need to listen to the voices of those on the margin. And when someone says, ouch, that hurts, we need to listen. Many moons ago, I was at a workshop, and Ginny Corder, who was the UUA moderator at the time, said, "I'm sorry" is a complete sentence. I'm sorry is a complete sentence. I have to tell you, it about blew my mind because I'd not thought about it that way before. We need to own that we make mistakes, and then we need to listen, very deeply listen. And sometimes the listening isn't a conversation for right here and now. One of the most important lessons I've learned in anti-racism work over the years is that you have to do your own work. In seminary, 20 years ago, I had a colleague set a really clear boundary. I kept trying to defend my intentions, but I didn't mean it that way. I wanted her to see that I was a good person, but I didn't understand the difference between intention and impact. I wasn't doing my own work, and she refused to engage in dialogue with me, rightly so. It took a really long time for me to understand that it wasn't her job to teach me. It was my job to educate myself and then pass on what I'd learned to others. Thank you for your lessons, Michelle. I still make lots of mistakes. Now I just know what not to say. What does it mean to live courageously in love? It means that our focus needs to be on the striving, not the attainment. Progress, not perfection, quips Denzel Washington in The Equalizer. It means we're going to mess up. We know we're going to make mistakes, and we're going to keep trying. Covenant asks us to commit ourselves to one another. For some of us, this building on the corner of Pine and Chestnut Street, or our virtual space in Zoom, YouTube, and Facebook, may be the only place we've ever encountered Unitarian Universalism. Some of us have been to other UU congregations, and one of the gifts of the pandemic is that we were able to virtually attend worship at many different congregations to find out how people live into their UU lives and identities. Our covenant is to the relationship to each other and to this local UU community and to the larger UU community throughout the United States and the world. And yes, there are Unitarian Universalist or Unitarian or Universalist congregations on every continent but Antarctica. And I'm guessing, since there are a lot of scientists in Antarctica, there are probably a few rogue UUs there too. The kind of cheesy video I shared from the 2013 General Assembly, I think, is important because it talks about this annual gathering. We only have a couple of days where we gather as a large community, and they took time every day to listen to one another. And I think that's really important, and that's why I wanted to share it with you. Not the silly music or the really well-done graphics. The Association of UU Congregations, or the UUA, reminds us that there are other people out there trying to live into the best practices, challenging ourselves to be part of the beloved community about which we speak. Sue Phillips shares, our people have worked theological miracles. Theological miracles, I love that phrase. As Unitarians and Universalists and Unitarian Universalists, we have allowed our fundamental beliefs to change over the centuries according to conscience and science and revelation. Our people have integrated the rationalism of science, the intuition of transcendentalism, and the ethics of humanism, and we've managed to stay together. I first came to this building on the corner of Pine and Chestnut in 1994 for an evening service. I don't even really remember it. I was in the Coast Guard on active duty, and I was in the middle of a really difficult tour on the U.S. Coast Guard Cutter Gallatin. Just needed a few moments of peace. Mom found this place for me. We came back in 1996 to have Andrew's child dedication rather than the expected traditional christening. We had the traditional christening gown, and then we left and headed to Cape Cod and Doug's new post in Woods Hole and a large buoy tender. I looked up the local UU congregation and signed the book that very first Sunday. Benjamin was born during our time there, and his child dedication was there. We decided we wanted to settle the kids and I in Lancaster, and Doug would move around. We started to look at houses. We'd already decided that the kids would attend the Lancaster Cooperative Preschool, and one of the requirements for our new house was that it had to be walking distance to this building. Yes, in 1999, not only did I sign the membership book, we bought our house around the corner on Charlotte Street. My involvement in UUCL has waxed and waned over the years. I preached my very first sermon right here from this very pulpit. This sacred community has supported me. I found out about 9/11 in front of the glass doors on my way to pick Ben up from the co-op. Doug and I celebrated our 10th wedding anniversary, the wedding right here. The precise moment I truly realized my call to ministry, I was sitting right about in the middle of those pews. This community has also caused me great heartache and pain. UUCL is my home, and I keep coming back. Our church has so much to offer each other and the world, and we could do so much if we can do the difficult work of healing. And covenant is the framework in which we can build our beloved community. It sounds easy. I'm in a group of religious professionals and seminarians working through our UU curriculum called Wellspring. And we're doing a deep dive into all of the UU principles. We have a covenant of right relationship, how we will be together, and how to bring ourselves back into relationship if there is harm. I don't know about you, but I'll go to the rug for anybody. Somebody hurts somebody, especially if it's somebody I care about, watch out. But one week, I was the one who was harmed. The intent of the words that were spoken were very different from the impact. Part of our covenant hadn't been clear and transparent enough, and I felt like I'd been called out in front of the class to the principal's office. I was profoundly hurt. I made a decision to live into the covenant. I wrote an email to the group. I told them how scared I was to write this email, naming that I was having a difficult time trusting in a group of religious professionals who are all committed to this way of life, to this work. And I wanted to be listened to and heard, but I didn't know that that would happen. Then again, if they didn't listen and hear, what was the point of the covenant anyway? I sent the email. There was a supportive response, and we met together 2 weeks later. And every time when we check in, the next conversation is, has anybody been harmed, and have we dealt with it adequately? And that week I was able to say, thank you. You heard me, and you took me seriously, and you valued me. And I didn't know how much I needed to hear that. The only repercussion that day was calling each other into a deeper relationship, to engaging one another deeply and honestly was an apology and a much more clear covenant. To do the work that is necessary to create the beloved community, we need to risk being ourselves and claiming both when we are harmed and when we cause harm. We covenant to be together. I'm in covenant with my colleagues. Long before we announced my affiliation last week, I had a covenant with Reverend Pat and Reverend Elizabeth, setting boundaries about how we will behave together, outlining our responsibilities and obligations to each other. One of the things that makes being in relationship possible is to act with humility, to always assume that I could be wrong, knowing that others also afford us that same humility, to recognize that we can learn from each other if we are together in our commitment to open and honest communication. It sounds easy, doesn't it? It sounds like a campfire invitation to sing Kumbaya. And I don't know about you, but I really hate that song. The tune isn't great. It has all that theistic, patriarchal language about God that doesn't even include half of the population of the world. It also asks us to hold hands and sing in harmony. It doesn't ask us to have deep conversation or to deeply listen to one another. Music is beautiful because it has movement. You don't need to be a musician to feel that. The music swells and falls, and you feel it. It crunches in discord, and then it moves to resolution. And that's what open, honest, and transparent communication is. And it's okay to expect that from ourselves and from each other. Of course, passive-aggressive is much more our style in this Pennsylvania Dutch corner of the world. We don't want to offend anybody. Politeness is more important than just about anything else. When my kids were little, I sometimes vented my frustration by screaming, "I don't like you right now!" That's kind of what covenant is. I don't like what you're doing, and I love you, and I want to get back to liking you. We also have a rather strong anti-authoritarian streak. We tend to be suspicious of processes and leadership. I've heard, "Why do we even need the UUA?" quite a few times over the years from different people. I've learned that we need them because they give us a roadmap of how to be in covenant, in right relationship with one another, because they support us when things are tough, because they remind us of who we want to be. We have neighbors in York and Reading and Harrisburg, others who are trying to live into our liberal faith in the context of South Central Pennsylvania and all the baggage that comes with it. I grew up here, and I've spent a lot of time over the years translating nuances of Lancaster County to those who ain't from around here. Because we are part of a tradition that can be traced from the 1st century Universalist to the 16th century in Transylvania to New England and the Pilgrims. Because history repeats itself if we don't know what happened before. Because we can do better. Because we will break covenant no matter how hard we try. Good people make mistakes. I couldn't begin to give you a list of all the mistakes and missteps I've made over the years. I usually catalog them at about 3 in the morning when I can't sleep. And then I get up in the morning and try to reflect on how I would handle it now that I know better. Doesn't mean I'll remember in the heat of the moment, but I promise to try and get up and try again and again and again. I own my mistakes and name them, even when I would rather people not see me for the flawed human being that I am. That demand for perfection is a legacy of our white supremacy culture. The demand that we get it right the first time. As we learn to become more transparent with each other, more gentle with each other, we can learn to offer that to ourselves as well. Kimberly Wilczewski says, as clergy, our sense of calling is not only toward leadership, but also for love of institution and tradition. I don't love power the way it's expressed in our patriarchal and misogynistic culture, power that's above another one, that sees some people as more important and more valuable. The vision I have is that of power with unions. We are stronger because I stand with you. that we don't need to recreate the wheel because somebody has already done that, because we have so much more in common with other people that we can learn from their mistakes and be free to make a whole different list of mistakes of our own. How do we think about being together? Can we move from being an I church to a we church? Can we co-conspire to amplify love? Sue Phillips explains, we must make covenant the architecture of our interdependence and trust that this glorious gift in our religious DNA will continue to nurture ever-evolving forms and practices, that together we might continue to increase the sum of love and justice in this bruised and hurting world. We're all part of that bruised and hurting world. None of us has made it here today without bumps, bruises, and scars. We need to practice gentleness and compassion with ourselves and each other before we can offer it to the world. Membership here is more than just signing a book. It's an invitation to be who you are, to come together, to nourish the spirit, connect in love, and act for justice. To be welcome just as you are. Our heritage, our faith invites you into community, to the community that is gathered this morning, to the community that will gather next week and the next and the next, to hope that our invitation will help others to find themselves here, just as we ourselves have found ourselves here. That this place and time can be a homecoming for you, as it was for me and so many others. The prophet Maya Angelou says, when we know better, we do better. May our covenant ever be an invitation to continuing to learn so that we can continue to do better. Peace, salam, shalom, and blessed be. And if you would rise in body or spirit, Eli is going to lead us in hymn number 1037 in the teal hymnal.
So for this hymn, it's a little different, you'll see. We are going to sing in response to words that Heather is going to speak. So the melody that we'll sing goes like this. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. Sing it with me. Ready? We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again.
Single voice would have made a difference.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For each time that our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible,
we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For each time we have struck out in anger without just cause,
we begin ourselves and each other.
has blinded us to the needs of others.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For the selfishness that sets us apart and alone,
we forgive ourselves and
we're falling short of the admonitions of the Spirit.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For losing sight of our unity.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For those and for so many acts, both evident and subtle, which have fueled the illusion of separateness.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. One more time. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
Please be seated.
This is the time in our service when we will pass the plate and accept your offerings. You may also go to our website to make a donation online. A portion of the offering will be shared this month with Chestnut Housing. Chestnut Housing provides affordable rental housing to people experiencing homelessness because a home is the foundation of a healthy and fulfilling life. While the plates are passed, I will be making some announcements, and the plates may now be passed. Do look to our weekly email newsletter, the Love Notes, for weekly need-to-knows and events at UUCL, as well as our Facebook page and website calendar. To sign up for the newsletter, look to our website or contact our office. Next Sunday's service on March 24th will be a special all-ages service on banned books, led by our Director of Faith Development, Elizabeth Gehron, and our minister, the Reverend Pat Guthman Harash. Following the service next Sunday will be a congregational meeting to vote on sanctuary improvements. Then, in the afternoon at 3 p.m., Alan, our pianist, will lead us on a journey through the history of jazz. Following today's service, all are welcome to enjoy coffee and tea and conversation in Emerson Hall. Board members will be present to answer questions about sanctuary updates. During the afternoon today, there will be a goddess gathering in the Women's Memorial Room and workshop 2 of this year's UUA Common Read, Repentance and Repair, on Zoom at 3 p.m. We are grateful for your gifts freely given.
Sorry. And the choir is hosting coffee hour afterwards, so join us for some Irish music and some goodies.
Let us join together to read our affirmation of faith found in the front of your gray hymnal. First in English and then in Spanish. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia, y el servicio es su ofrenda. Este es nuestro gran pacto, el convivir unidos en paz, el buscar la verdad en amor, y ayudarnos unos a los otros.
And as Kim extinguishes our chalice, listen to these words of Reverend Krista Taves, the work we share. It is our work, shared with each other in covenant, that creates and sustains this beloved community. We extinguish this chalice, but its light lives on in the directions we have chosen today. The light of this faith lives on in us together, in our hearts, minds, bodies, and spirits. Amen and blessed be. Go in joy, go in peace, go in love.
And you may join me in singing the Going Forth section of the bottom sheet of your paper for Here Together. You may rise and body your spirit as you're able. If you want to sing the harmony,